All right, so this morning we are looking at a 21 RBH by Trail Cruiser. It's a 2006 model, and just picked this thing up from a local dealer. As you can see, we have an evident issue. So right here, really soft in the middle. What I think happened is the previous owner did not properly winterize it. The rest of this is in amazing shape. So, this is one issue, but I don't know what it's going to look like under here. Canvas has a few stains on it that are easily remedied, but right now, we're going to deal with the floor. So first thing we have to do is take all of this stuff out, strip it down to the floor, and investigate. Morning, everyone. Eric, DIY RVer here. So this project that I'm taking on is a 2006 Trail Light RBH. Trail Light is a company that was bought out a few years ago, and I don't really know why they ever stopped making RVs. This thing is great. So the biggest thing about it is that it weighs 2,700 pounds and is a 21-foot double axle travel trailer. They have gone to every length to make this thing as light as humanly possible. So you can see behind me, sorry for the construction mess here, there's a set of bunk beds. And over here, there's a hybrid bunk on the front and a dinette that folds down. So this is a really well-designed little unit. It's totally towable with our 2008 Honda Pilot. The Pilot does a great job of towing our current tent trailer, which only weighs about 500 pounds less than this. Challenges, of course, the aerodynamics with a unit like this. So as I'm taking this challenge on, the biggest thing is to keep in mind that the designers of this unit did every possible thing to shed weight. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not adding anything. And right now, the soaking wet floor and whatever's underneath it soaked is going to be adding some weight, not to mention this huge chunk of plywood that the previous owner threw down as a stopgap measure. So let's dig in, figure out what's going on. A little more investigation. We've taken just the cushions off right now. And with the cushions off, you can see that there's a little bit of damage to the front here. We don't know why this is, but I've tested the thing thoroughly. There may at one point have been a leak, but it is 100% sealed. We had pouring rain for the last 2 days. So let's see what happens underneath. Taking everything out here. You can see this is going to be the complicated area because we have our furnace, we have our HVAC hoses, which are just the aluminum dryer lines basically, running to different sections of the trailer to try to distribute the heat as best they can. And the other thing we see is a bunch of crap. So, this really wasn't that well taken care of. This water tank looks pretty new to me. It looks newer than everything else. We can also see that there's some noticeable damage on the bottom of that wall. So I'm wondering if maybe that's where the leak came in. But as I step down here, see how much that floor deflects. Right, that floor is shot. So everything's rotted. Let's tear it apart. So first thing is to remove the side trim pieces. The hoses just slide on here. This guy obviously has been screwed in, so we're just going to remove him, finish that job. Okay, now we're going to take the whole fresh tank assembly apart. There's a whole bunch of pipes down here. So to keep things simple, what we're going to do is keep most of the pipes attached to the actual tank. This seems a little bit counterintuitive, but that is what we're going to do. The exception is this pipe here. This is the actual fill nozzle. So that when we pull that off, there's going to be some water dumping probably. I already did it and dumped some there. So I went and got a bucket. We're going to do it this way. So you're going to pull it off and then put the end in the bucket, let the gravity do the work. So there's one going through, obviously that was a slipshod job there. So that goes through the floor. Let's see if I can reroute that. But then this big long line comes and connects over to the demand pump. So we're going to take it off on the demand pump side and we're going to leave everything else hooked up to the actual pump. Now, again, you're playing water and electricity here. So make sure your pump switch is off. Okay, look. Oh, good. My pump switch is off. Wonderful. And we're going to just go over here too. Water pump off. Okay, done. So disconnected from the pump side. And again, we're going to see this all the way over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this end And I'm gonna keep it high and gradually feed it through so that hopefully we're not gonna have a huge spill. We're already having a bit of spill, so we're gonna try to deal with this. Free now, move this strap out of the way. We're gonna lift the whole demand tank assembly. Okay, and we see that there is a sensor on the side of it. That was a surprise, and we don't want to mess up this sensor. So how are we going to do this? We are going to disconnect this red wire here. And then we're going to be able to pull the entire system free, disconnect the red and white wires, and then leave them in the tank. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to undo all of these screws around here, around the edge, and where this joins here, we're going to undo these screws. We're going to lift that bench out in a section. Do the exact same thing with this section over here, trying to keep our weight on the plywood because that floor is just absolutely pooched. And then eventually we're going to work our way over here, but we're going to try to create as much space around as we possibly can to make our lives easy. Now we're going to take out all of this hardware all along the bottom, the center. So we're back in business here. We have taken the tank out. We have taken the door side bench out, and look at that. Boy, I bet that's our culprit right there. Maybe it wasn't the fresh tank. When I pulled the fresh tank out, it actually said the original part numbers, so it was stock. But man, that is a nasty looking door. So we have to fix that urgently. Now we've got to take the center section out, and what we're going to do is try to keep this intact as much as possible. We're going to take the bench out around it, then we're going to take the interior section out. Now after taking off this interior corner piece here, which was caulked. I guess he thought that might prevent water leakage, but that's not the way it works. So, you know, this is all Luan. It's all really light, and it absorbs water quite nicely. So this little joint here is really weak. So we're actually just going to pull this apart entirely. And then I'm going to reinforce it with screws down this side to be able to lock them together nice and tight when we get to untangle this mess. First thing is to get stuff out of the way so we have more clearance to work. And then we are going to put things roughly back. We're going to try to be methodical as we can. So we're going to try to keep this bench unit itself intact. We can do most of this without turning the electrical off. So we're going to leave the electrical on for now, so we have some decent light. Then after that, I'm going to turn the electrical off because as soon as we're working around any of this stuff, you got to shut it off. So I'm going to unplug the master power, cheap insurance. And we're now working around electrical, right? So let's be safe, shut things off. This piece here, you've seen that I pried it off a little bit. You can use a flathead screwdriver. A better thing would be a trim removal tool, or even a plastic bicycle tire lever. Just pop that off. Then we're going to remove these, and after we remove these, we're going to take the outlet out. We're going to leave the outlet attached to the whole system. These guys are all one-time use fasteners. So what we're going to try to do is keep is to just take this switch out and leave everything connected here so that we can see where they're supposed to go. And what I've done here is, again, I've just disconnected in the simplest way possible. So our emergency shutoff line that goes to our furnace is just here. And then the CO2 sensor is here. All the wires are taped up. It's just gonna live here. There's no real reason to take it apart. The AC outlet, I just slid it out and fed it up over here, and it's just gonna rest in the sink for now. In the end, we're gonna feed it back through that little slot because we're not cutting that section out of the cabinets out. At least I don't think we're going to have to, but we'll see when we get disassembling this bench. Again, we're going to be careful. So these pieces of hardware hold the bench together. Okay, these ones, you got to look to see which ones hold into the actual wall. We're going to try to do this in as clean a sweep as possible. So we're going to take all the bolts out that hold it to the structure. So we've got the bench out. We've got all this room to work, but things are about to get real. So first thing, our electrical is off. Again, reminder, okay, take the electrical off. Okay. Electrical we just pulled out here. Okay, remember your master electrical is off. So while the electrical is off, we're gonna try to unplug everything electrical that we can. Demand pump has all of these wires connected to it. So our little demand pump, we're gonna cut this one, and again, try to leave everything as much as we can on the demand pump side. So this is the harness wire. We're gonna clip this, and get our demand pump out of here. We're also gonna disconnect this line, and then we're gonna zip the pump out of the floor. We've already disconnected the wiring here, and you will notice that there is another wire going to the front, which we're gonna have to take some stuff. Demand pump location. Again, this is nasty. I hope yours looks better than this, but, okay. We're looking about 21 inches away from the wall in a straight line in between the furnace and the hot water. All right, so we're torn down to here. Demand pump is gone. What I've done is I've taken a magic marker and I've labeled some things. My writing's kind of messy, but the idea is just like, we're gonna try to take this out as smoothly and as quickly and efficiently as possible. And in order to do that, we're gonna have to label things, but we also need some more room to work in here. I can't really get back there. So we're gonna take this shelf out. I was hoping to avoid that. You see there's fasteners down there. There's fasteners up here. There's a lot of them. Just gonna take it out, lift this unit, which means we're gonna have to cut this little piece of silicone here, which whatever. Everything's out. I'm gonna hold off on getting the shelf out of here for now, just because it might actually make more work for me later, and I don't necessarily want to do that. So pause on that shelf removal, and I'm gonna go into the trailer. We're gonna have a look, see what we can find. So, big idea here is that we are gonna find the easiest way to route these pipes down and out of the way. So, under here, well, that's not going to be easy. So we've got this membrane, and this membrane is still intact with all of our lines right here, so we might just be out of luck. Oh no, wait, look, we've got these wonderful things. So we're going to disconnect these compression fittings here and here, disconnect these bolts up here. They look like 10 or 12 mil bolts to me. So I'm gonna go get some wrenches and we're gonna get that done. Now I pulled these tubes up. I reefed on that one a little hard, so I may have kinked that line. We're gonna try to avoid much of a mess here, but these lines are not easy to work with. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna disconnect these lines. Then we're gonna go outside. We're gonna pull the lines to, and we're not gonna reef too hard, just hand tight, right? A little corrosion around here, that's pretty normal. These guys are bypass valves. If you don't have hot water bypass valves, you should. They prevent you from having to put water into the tank. Okay, so now my water lines are outside the RV. And these things basically get inserted. So we're looking at the hot water heater right now. We're gonna do that first, then we'll come over and we'll do the furnace. So the hot water heater, there's this little connection right here, okay? To stabilize this, really that's a 5/8 size. So I'm gonna go get a 5/8 wrench And we're gonna take this off here. If you try to rip it, this whole thing will move. So we're just gonna get a 5/8 wrench, hold on to that, take it off here, and then we're gonna try to get that line out of the way. Take all these screws out. Wedge the hot water heater out really carefully, taking a very sharp X-Acto knife, working at all this stuff here, and then gently prying it out with a pry bar. Messed up and scratched my decal there. Kind of sucks, but then you pull it out a little bit and it'll hang up. You need to get these guys cut, okay? This is the harness wire. So again, these are one-time use connectors. You're gonna have to buy new connectors. You're gonna cut the trailer side of this and you're good to go. Then you're gonna gently lift and pull this thing. Isn't coming out easy. So what we have to do, because it's getting snagged on the foam, is, and again, the guy who fixed this last did not do an awesome job here. So he never removed the foam. So there's this little strapping. Cut the strapping. Okay, then you can take the top piece out. Have to cut the strapping on the other side too. You're just gonna wedge it. We have the hot water heater completely out. You can see the aluminum sleeve inside here. See that Luan trim? Okay, so we see that's nice and dry, so we're good to go here. Next thing we're gonna do is move on to the furnace. Now, undo these 4 bolts here, okay? And then boom, just like the other connection, we got to connect back there, okay? We're gonna take that guy off, again, brace it with another wrench, and then we're gonna take all these screws out, cut the caulking, bada bing, bada boom, done. Everything is out. Hot water heater is out. Furnace is out. And what I'm trying to do now is figure out a way to get through here. See what happens when we find the rotten floor. Because if we don't have to take all this out, it'll save a lot of work. But we're gonna do this right no matter what. So again, we see that sleeve. Now what we're gonna do is take a picture of the wiring. Then we're gonna take all this wiring and tuck it into this little alcove here. You can see these little pieces. I just took some of the clamps from the gas hoses and I just, did those up and got them out of the way. Again, the idea is we're just trying to clear things out so that we can work and do some better investigating. Wires. Yellow wire runs over to the demand pump. This green wire, big harness thing, comes over here. And then the 3-color blue, green, gray wire set is for the hot water heater, the electronic ignition for the hot water heater. Okay, so nearing the end of the teardown here. So I took some video and I mapped where these wires went to. And I wrote some notes, but just as a backup, what I did, since we're tucking everything into this little alcove here, which is super conveniently located, what I did is I took some white Gorilla Tape I'd kicking around. It's going to be a bit of a chore to get off, I'm sure. And then I just wrote with a permanent marker where these lines go to. So this one goes to the CO2 detector. Most of this big harness goes to the furnace. All of that's labeled. And then I'm just going to take it and sort of gently tuck it in. This yellow line, again, goes to the pump. I'm going to take that, tuck all of that stuff in here. And then the only thing protruding are the gas lines. So I'm almost ready. Another system that I put in place, and I should have mentioned at the beginning. Okay, so just a quick note. What I use is Ziploc bags and little note pads here. And every time I took hardware out of somewhere, I made a note as to where it's from, and I put them in their own individually wrapped Ziploc bag. Taking a little more time in teardown is going to save you a lot of work in reassembly. I've watched some videos where they just sort of zip the thing apart, and then they're like, oh crap, how does this go back together? Because everything looks the same and everything's a big jigsaw puzzle. So again, here's what it looks like with all those wires gone, right? And then the only thing protruding are those gas lines, which I'm going to try to get out of the way as best I can while I explore. But we're also going to require a little finesse. So The big hole there, I just basically grabbed that and reefed. This is all held in with staples and finishing nails, but we need to remove this veneer here. So this piece of veneer needs to come off. We're gonna work our way all the way down. We're gonna get rid of this thing, see what happens. Floor at the edges was soft. We're not gonna do all this work and cut the last corner. However, this seems to be the spot where Trail Light decided, hey, you know what? Let's build a really, really strong bunker here, this bulkhead. Let's build this thing super strong so that it'll never fail. And so there's a bajillion screws and stuff in here. Basically, I'm gonna be careful because I'm on really wet stuff here. So this is all screwed in here, screwed in on the bottom, okay? Then there's screws to the frame on the top. So you gotta pull up this veneer section. What we're gonna try to do is remove as little of this as possible. So you see there's a screw there, a screw there. These screws here on the side, those are the ones we're gonna pull out. We're gonna try to leave this piece of veneer intact as much as we can. So we're gonna get the stuff out of the way first. Then we're gonna take that out of the way. It wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. My guy MacGyvered these two screws in here. They might be in yours as well. I gently pried them out and sort of got them on an angle and then pulled the entire bulkhead that way. The bulkhead frame is stuck together with just staples and finishing nails, so I'm going to screw it together and actually reinforce it, make a solid frame out of the thing to make sure that, you know, again, we have that stability and that insurance. You can see this part, this actual section of the frame here is dry. I have no interest in removing things that aren't broken, so I'm not going to touch that at this point. You know, this is pretty well built in there to support that propane holder in there. But you can see this, right? You can see this water damage here and here. But if you look, it looks like it's coming from that seam. And it looks like it's coming from the bottom. It's worse on that side, but it's also pretty bad on this side. So it's hard to say. I mean, this could have been a very tiny little bit of water that caused this intrusion. But in terms of the floor is absolute butter right here. And it's pretty solid here. So my guess is that this here isn't the problem. We're gonna see more when we get under here. So what we gotta do is tie these wires back. This is a crazy long wire run. Don't know why they did this. We're gonna go under and just investigate and make sure we know. So here are the wires. This blue or green and white wire here. Those are the ones that go to the turn signals. So we need those, okay? This guy over here, this red and white wire is the one that goes to the level sensor for the fresh tank. So we're gonna need both of those. For the level sensor, we're gonna pull this thing straight through. We're gonna do the exact same thing for this. We're gonna cut it up inside and then pull it down so that we can put it together with a moret later. So I've now pulled through the holes the interior fresh tank sensor, labeled that, and then also the signal light sensor and labeled that. So I'm gonna have to make sure that those holes are there. So the inside of the trailer, everything is cleared out, wires are pulled through. Only thing protruding is the gas line and the water lines that are just set up there. So now, moment of truth, we're gonna pull up this plywood. Actually, we'll start at the far corner here and see what we're up against. All right, and here is the damage report. Oh boy, pretty bad. Figured out the floor construction is 1/4 inch, looks like 1/4 inch Luan, 1.5 inch thick foam, and then 1/4 inch Luan again, which is mind-boggling to me. I have no idea why on earth they would have done it that way, but that is the way they constructed it. I might beef it up when I reconstruct it, but I am going to be conscious of weight. It is absolutely soaked all the way near the door, all the way near the end. And so again, I'm thinking that this guy here is the culprit, because it is the only thing that makes sense. It's all rotted around it. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to increase the size of that hole and put a bigger access door there, to make sure that we know how to, that we're like 100% sure that that's not going to happen again. This guy over here, I have no idea why this is wet, but this is still, like, this is really soggy here, but this is pretty solid. So frame rails are here, and there's nothing here. No frame rail at all there. which is really interesting. But this part of the floor that is the original construction does feel solid. So if it's dry, I bet it's going to work. But now we have to design a new floor. Fun times! All right, we're into the evening hours now. Accidentally punched a hole in that membrane. So debating construction ideas. And in the meantime, we're going to make sure we do a thorough job of this. So I'm starting to think underneath this cabinet might have to come out based on where that black stops. So we're going to consider that overnight. And right now, we're just working on getting the vinyl floor up all the way to the back. As you can see, the flooring back here is super duper solid. A little bit of staining there around the sink that I'm still thinking about. But the rest of this is very, very solid. So I'm using my trusty ice chipper, because I'm Canadian. You can use a flat shovel if you don't have an ice chipper kicking around. But otherwise, you know, the glue is pretty tenacious, and I'm just peeling it up best I can. So here's the thing. You basically have to keep looking. I don't know what's under here, but I got right up to this point, and then I thought, you know what? This isn't that much extra work just to take this stuff out. So I stashed the cushions up here. I'm going to take that out because of an unpleasant surprise that I found over here. So, yeah, you guessed it. In here, stinks, black mold, soft floors. So, we're going to have to take all of this out and maybe everything on this entire side. So, we will find out. I'm done as much as I can right now, so I'll have to finish this in the morning, but I will tackle this right now. This is after I have pulled the rear bunk off. You can see some ingress, and again, unfortunately, it stops like right there. So again, I'm looking at the door being the culprit here, which is there's a slight D-lam on the outside of the door, which makes sense. So this guy's going to need a new seal. He's going to need to be caulked again. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run the flooring, like vinyl sheet flooring, up toward the edge to sort of build a place for the water to congregate. So that if it does rain, we can actually catch it before it has a chance to get down that seam and soak into the floorboards. So, you know, this is good that we found this. And again, you can kind of see this pattern. It comes out sort of to here. There's a little bit of a moisture issue around here, so I'm going to deal with that. Underneath the bathtub, though, actually looks okay, which is good because it's a pain in the ass to take the bathtub out of these things. But this section is going to have to come out. So we're going to have to take the frame out from underneath the bathtub. We're going to have to pull the toilet. And, you know, depending on what I find tomorrow, we're going to start with this corner cabinet. We're going to move to this cabinet here, and then, you know, if we have to proceed all the way along, you know, this is what I really don't want to do. It's going to add a whole extra day to the project, but if we got to do it, we got to do it, because we're not cutting corners. So we are currently about 9:20 p.m. on Saturday. I've been at this for about 9 hours, and again, carefully and methodically. So we're going to do this right. You'll see that I taped garbage bags over the outside. I put some Gorilla Tape over that thing. And I left the tent out because I really want this thing to have some experience with the rain. I want to make sure that now this is all out, that I'm not going to be getting any water ingress tonight. So this is, again, like cheap insurance. We've done this much work. Let's make sure that we do the whole thing right. What I know for sure is at this point, I do not have to pull out this cabinet, which, thank God, because pulling out a fridge and undoing all of this would be a huge pain. I also know that I do not have to take out this wall, which is also awesome, because taking out this wall means taking out this cabinet. And again, like, grateful for small miracles. So we are going to be replacing all the plywood down here, and we're probably going to have to cut it to be a seam. We're going to redo the floor from the ground up pretty well in the whole trailer. So, you know, given that, we're not going to cut corners. We're going to do this right. See you tomorrow. Day 2. unfortunately, I bought a project and I'm getting a project. So yesterday we were talking about the scope of it ending here, but as you can see, the rot continues through. And in my nightly investigations, I discovered the rot continues through back to here. So we are now looking at a full gut, basically. It's going to take a while. This is going to be totally not fun, but it's necessary, right? We do this halfway. We're going to do it again. So I would encourage you to not stop looking, right? Just because you walk on one spot on the floor and you're like, "Wow, this feels spongy, and over here feels pretty good." Yeah, here feels pretty good, but then we look over here and that does not look so good. So, again, maintain your RV. This is not too hard. I guarantee all of this happened because someone stored it outside improperly and did not caulk things and ignored warning signs. So you see how we're going to put this back together, that we're going to do it in such a way that we will notice when something goes wrong rather than just hiding problems. But now we're into a huge job. So now we're looking at possibly taking this wall out. We're looking at taking this door out. We're looking at taking this cabinet out. We're looking at leaving this stuff, thank God, taking all of this out and turning around. We're going to take the pantry out, the fridge out, the cabinet. All of this stuff's got to go, right? If we don't do it right, we're going to have to do it again. Side cabinet. See that it's up here with a piece of trim. We're going to try to rescue that piece of trim without trashing it. Over here, it's held on by some caulking. Again, that's classic tan caulking. Try to match the wood. Inside, we got bolts on the top, on two sides, as you can see. Bolts over there as well. But what I'm wondering is this whole thing just fastened to the floor with these big screws? So we're going to try that first. This is the part that's a bit of a pain in the butt, taking out this pantry cabinet. You can see here that there's this nice piece of veneer, and when you pull at it, nothing happens. So you can pivot the cabinet in and out away from the main cabinet here, but you can't actually remove it. So that's because behind these little veneers here are these, and there's screws holding it in. There isn't one on the bottom, as you can see, right? But there is one here, there's one here, there's two in the top compartment. So you gotta take those veneers out. What I recommend is getting in like a trim tool like this. So I just kind of got in and worked under a little bit, really gently. There we go, get it to pop out. And then once you can get it with your hands, hey, again, there we go. There's our last screw. We pull that out, we're gonna be able to move this. You've seen this black mold here. We can't fix this, so this has to come out. What we're gonna try to do is undo as few electrical connections as possible. The box is disconnected, so we're gonna leave it on the ground, but we're gonna chase these two wires here, and we're going to bring them down so that we do not have to undo all of this wiring. We're just gonna try to move this whole thing out as like a clean unit. Might not happen, but worth a shot, which is why we took the stove out first, so we'll see what happens. We're gonna cut a straight line back from that neck for the gas line, again, just to make sure it's clean. On this side, all of these things where the veneer cuts through, we're just gonna slice a hole in the veneer, again, so it goes straight back, so we can just slide this stuff into place. The piping is already in place, so that's pretty easy. But we gotta get this cabinet out of here. The complicated part is gonna be disconnecting the plumbing drain, which means we're gonna have to do some plumbing when we get this thing back together, but that is okay. So this is how the plumbing is run. And we're gonna take all of these fasteners out here, and the ones on the other side, and we're gonna see what we can do. Hard decisions. So, step one, we gotta decide what we're gonna do with this gas line here. And I think we're gonna stick with the original plan of cutting that line out. We just have to make sure that there's nothing underneath. So, I'm using my oscillating cutting tool down here, and I've cut a little bit out really carefully so I could see what I was doing, and then I just undid that beam at the back, this little, half-inch by half-inch framing thing they've got here. And I tucked all the wires behind that. I don't know why they weren't tucked behind that in the first place. It just seems like it's going to make things a lot easier. But now I'm going to be able to lift this out without ripping the wires out. The back of this electrical panel is no joke. So, I mean, unless you're an electrician, if you can avoid this, because the front of it looks like this, like the front is no picnic. So what we're gonna do, because it's the path of least resistance, even though it's not what we wanted to do, is we are gonna undo these two and we're gonna feed them back through. We're gonna isolate them and we'll be able to hook them back up. Controlled circuit. We really wanna get this right. So again, we've got two blues right on top of each other and these little crimp connectors. We also have these two whites and these little crimp connectors. So we got to take this apart and then feed the wire back through here, back to our box so that we're not running a labeling system again. I've labeled the kitchen AC. We've pulled it all out from this cabinet. I've put those outlets in a little box. This is for the Atwood control switch. This guy is for the kitchen GFI. There's screaming kids playing in the background. This guy is the Atwood control switch that I took a picture of and showed you guys earlier. So these two, I just pulled in into the cabinet. So we're gonna have a nice, easy way to cut that through. And then just to be safe, okay, we're gonna open the electrical panel, find the GFI, and we're gonna kill that GFI. Again, cheap insurance. There's really no reason not to. So we could see here, 6 is LTS, 5 is radio, so we're gonna need that. LTS, furnace, radio, so 6, yeah, main breaker 5, we're gonna kill that. Disconnected here. On the rebuild, okay, we're gonna slide it in here. This little piece at the back is gonna have to be braced a little bit extra because we're taking that whole pipe right out. We're just gonna slide it at the back. We're gonna cut that section and glue it back together. So we'll see what happens. You see, we had some success in getting this out. Juggling putting flooring in around this is going to be challenging. So good news is the water stopped, as you can see, right there. So it looks like an under the sink leak that wasn't remedied. So this is, you know, again, negligence would have been easy to avoid, but this person decided not to do it that way. So now it's my problem, which I knew, like we knew we were getting into here, right? And we're doing this right. So I'm really glad that I took up this cabinet because that floor is just pooched. Again, it's just gone. So had I not done that, I would have never known. It took about an hour and 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours to get the whole thing out. You can see how many fasteners were in here. You can also see the caulking along the edge. Make sure when you're cutting the caulking, again, you're cutting it with the blade as flush to the wall as possible so you're not digging into this wallpaper. It's really hard to replace and stuff sometimes doesn't adhere to it, but you can see the outline of the cabinets as it goes along. So this stuff is probably just going to live on the ground for now, and we're going to clean it up as best we can and run those cables sort of to a central location. Probably try to set everything right on top of this bulkhead here. So what we did is I took this out, and like most RV fixtures, this is not well built. These things were never designed to be installed and removed. They were built in place for the most part, or half built and then dropped in. Again, priority being quick and light, which means this entire thing was fabricated with staples. I don't know about you, but in my kitchen, my cabinets are not put together with staples. They are put together with screws. And here again, I suggest that you find some screws. You will have pulled a whole bunch out. You're not going to reuse the fasteners that were in rotted wood, right? So I have a whole bunch of fasteners kicking around, and I decided I was going to throw some screws in this to make it a lot more rigid. So you can see here that I put some screws in on these rails. Screws are really cheap insurance here. And this is the screw that's protruding because that attaches onto the lower cabinet bulkhead. But you can see when I move it, this thing is relatively solid. And again, screws there, screws there, screws there, screws holding the countertop in. So I probably put 20 screws into this thing and massively increase the structural rigidity, which is what we want. And we didn't really add much weight for a lot of benefit. So this thing is now going to go into the garage for storage, and we will put it back, and next is the bathroom. Okay, so back in here. So we've tidied everything up. Now we're looking at a much larger space to deal with. And the next thing is the bathroom, and we're gonna check under this cabinet. again, we're gonna get rid of everything that could possibly need to be replaced. But this again, blessing right here is dry, because this electrical system would be so much work. And right here, I actually started disassembling this cabinet, but it is so much work, and the wood around it all the way is dry. So I'm gonna cut to make sure that that's all clear. I took the pantry cabinet out there, and you can see that that part is stained. So that was a good call. But removing this is the only thing that really can't go back in. So if you can avoid removing this, that'd be great. It's built in such a way that you will destroy it if you try to pull it apart. And that's not what you want to do, since it's kind of a centerpiece. So long story short, I have zip tied all the wires up. I've isolated all the wires. Just to be safe, I've shut off the breaker. So we're about to turn the lights back on, because frankly, I want to listen to the radio, and it's getting late. It's 7:15, and it's early May here in Canada. So I want to make sure that, you know, I have some light and some tunes to keep me going late into the evening. So let's take my 30 amp cord. Okay, my breakers are off again. So, all right, back inside. You'll see that I have zip tied all of these things out of the way. I've actually zip tied them to the pipe to make sure they're out of our way on that bulkhead. This area, as you can see, is nice and dry. Thank God, because we really did not want to have to undo all the ground wires and cut all that up. So we're gonna have to carefully take the floor out around there. The idea is going to be to leave bare floor except for where we're walking, because linoleum or click flooring or whatever will just cover up any leaks. And what we want to do is notice when leaks come in. This is fiberglass, so it's going to be hard to find until it winds up on the floor. And once it hits wood, it will be noticeable. So we're going to do that. That's our master plan. And you can see here, the light area is the area where people walk. So this is where we are going to have flooring. And the rest of it over here is where we are not going to have flooring, which no one sees anyway. So what I did is I zip tied this off, and I shut the electrical off. It's getting dark. It's about 20 after 7 here, and it's early May in Canada. So again, you know, I want to keep going till I'm tired. Maybe 9 o'clock at night, I'll go in for a glass of wine, something like that. But right now, I'm feeling it, so we're going to keep going. I'm about to connect the 30 amp, but just in case, because we have this rat's nest over here, I've isolated the wires, but again, you're playing with electricity, and a cool trailer is no good to you if you're dead. So just to be super safe, we are going to shut off all the breakers. You'll notice I've flipped all the breakers off. Go back out and take my 30 amp cord. We're going to plug it back in. You'll notice, by the way, I'm running just a converter, a 30 to 15, just quick converter, not even a dog bone, because this unit doesn't have AC. I don't think I'm going to put AC in it. So you really don't need that, but you would be really stressing the system with a converter. So if you are running an AC unit, you might, and you're going to be at home a lot, you might want to think about having an electrician wire in a 30 amp for you. Okay, so there's my outlet. We're in. Come on. There we go. All right, and we're gonna go back and we're gonna check our circuits. We need lights, we need radio. So nothing. Oh, lights, radio. Boom. Oh, no, we need that one. Don't need that one. Okay, so there, we've got two. These guys are all the outlets. This is not quite accurate. This is more accurate. So this is the water heater. This is the exterior lights. This is the radio. So we really don't need those things right now. I'm going to use an extension cord for power tools. But what I do need is lights because I want to work at night. That's done. I've torn the stuff apart in the bathroom, taken the toilet out. 2 13 mil bolts. You pop the covers off by hand. 13 mil bolts onto that flange, and then the back hand nut. You might have seen outside, I took the liberty of draining the low gravity side of the winterization fluid. You want to do that. It'll save you some trouble for sure. So now I got my big old work light here I borrowed from my neighbor. We are going to take this vanity apart. We're going to see what's underneath here. I'm guessing some wetness because I'm guessing that this came from the drain down here, but we will soon find it. It's pretty easy, okay? Lots of fasteners, including ones back there, back here, down along the bottom, up the sides. Unzip everything, it goes to a floor or a wall. And then we got to cut the caulking here. Interesting demo point in the bathroom. So this wall here is freestanding. The tub is actually supported by that little structure. So it really, you can kind of cut everything out around it. So what I'm gonna do is take these wires, which go to our rear signals. They're kind of important. And we're going to tape them up on the wall. I'm gonna cut everything out from under this, try to move that little platform out of the way. And we'll see what we're up against in here. As you can see around the toilet, we're in okay shape. So this wall is not going anywhere, which thank God, because again, better access to this area. This little frame is in the way. I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can see it's kind of glued in place with some of the epoxy resin that's used to make this tub. You know, chances are we're never going to use this thing, but we certainly don't want to damage it. So silver linings, these little legs, which are totally in the way right now of me fixing this floor, are propped up, and guess what? In with staples. So we're going to get a hammer, we're going to knock those things out, and we're going to get rid of that floor and investigate. Hey everyone, all right, so we're on day 3. Today's more of an administrative day. I'm going to pick up some parts and basically put all this together. So I spent my day sourcing what I wanted, drawing myself a diagram, which I did to scale, double checking all my measurements. So what I've decided to do again is I'm going to leave this middle section here. And the idea of a foam sandwich board, where I know it's going to be, inexpensive, and I also know it's going to be light. But I don't plan on fixing this again, and I'm a pretty big dude. I'm 210 pounds, so I'm not super interested in having saggy floors at all. So what I've decided to do in the design is to leave this section, but these gray things that you see are going to be pressure treated 2x4s that I'm using as cross beams, because there really are no meaningful cross beams in this vehicle at all. And it's just relying on that glue structure to hold everything rigid. So I'm going to give that glue structure a little bit of help. Each of these spaces is 2 feet. So what we're going to do is lay a layer of Luan on top. We're going to put painter's tape up the walls to lay out where the studs are going to go so that we can use a snap line and lock them down. Then we're going to lay in foam board here. So this is a 2-foot length of foam board, stud, foam board, stud, foam board, stud, foam board, stud. Each stud we're going to lay down with a snap line. We're going to screw the studs through the first bottom layer of Luan all the way down to the frame. So we're going to map out the frame rails to make sure that we know where they're going to go. And screw the studs with self-drilling screws that I'll get into a little bit later when I do this part. So that, again, we're providing that rigidity. It adds 77 pounds to the whole structure to use these. I ordered 8, but we're probably going to use 6. So it's going to add, between 66 and 77 pounds to the weight of our entire project, which I think is really money and time and weight well spent. Much less weight than adding thicker materials. It'd be over 100 extra pounds to add, say, a 1/2 inch. And it'd be another 100 pounds on top of that to go 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. So it'd be looking, we're adding 77 pounds instead of adding 200 something pounds. So this is how it's looking right now. These are all the materials. So again, this is Canadian, this is 2020. So I'm looking at about $680 worth of materials, just a couple extras there. Like I added a 12 volt USB outlet that matches the interior light switches. So that I'm going to create a charging station in the rig. But other than that, this is all the stuff that you need. So our basic design is going to be Luan bottom. And then we're going to lay out the studs. Then we're going to put the foam in between the studs. We're going to lay the we're going to drill the studs down into the frame. And then we're going to lay the new layer of Luan on top, use our snap grids and wood screws to screw that all down. And each time we put a new layer down, we're going to use foam board adhesive. So glued and screwed each step of the way. This thing is going to be rigid and solid, all for the low price of 77 pounds. Back to day 3, I guess 2.5, of the Trail Cruiser 21 rebuild. So where we're at now, I've shown you the plans. We're going to leave most of this stuff here because we're going to do this in 2 stages. This section of the floor is still good. So this is what we're going to call our bridge. This is going to connect the old part and the new part. The 2 old parts. So we're going to do the back in one section. We're going to do the front in one section because we're running out of space in the garage. And frankly, it kind of makes sense to do things in stages to minimize the disasters. So right now that we've designed our floors and feeling good about this, we're going to start tearing things apart. You'll see that I have my precision cutter and my circular saw there. First thing we're going to do is go under the rig again. Just make sure we're not going to be cutting in anything. So you see that I cut off the power to the trailer already. Okay, so there is no electricity running through this thing. Again, cheap insurance. It's important that we do not do anything dangerous. We do not do anything with electricity. So we see this is stuff we do not want to get too close to. So we're going to use the precision cutter around here because these are all the propane lines. There are also propane lines right here. So again, we want to be careful not to nick those propane lines. And other than that, we're pretty good. So we're going to look for these 2 holes as a benchmark here. We're just going to carefully do stuff. We use the saw as little as possible. And otherwise, we're just going to try to pull things out little by little. Here goes. Okay, so here we are. Oh, my trailer grew legs. So yeah, I'm standing in this detritus that used to be my trailer. And this is like, you know, if you were to have seen this when you were on the lot, you'd be like, yeah, no, forget this dumpster fire. And yet here I am after buying it. There's a little bit of panic setting in, but I'm just kind of moving through it. So you can see that I have cut sort of a guide length all the way along the wall until I got to this steel cross member here. But you notice from there to here, there are no cross members. So my plan of putting in, I'm just going to zoom out here. My plan of putting in cross members every 2 feet will add a heck of a lot of rigidity to this floor. And this floor is solid. Like, this is really rigid when it's together. But the idea that for this section here, there's actually no support whatsoever is a little bit terrifying. So I had to disconnect one of the gas lines. Those electrical wires that I carefully put up, they were screwed, of course, to the membrane on the bottom. So I had to get rid of that. I've got a new underbelly coming tomorrow. So we're in good shape. It's about $100 at my RV store. So here we're dealing with some pretty solid floor. And just to give you an idea, okay, that's the thickness. That's what 1/4 inch Luan looks like. And you can't, like, that's rigid. So it's really light. It's really, really rigid. But this is what dry Luan looks like. So that's what I'm going to be putting in here. But I'm going to cut this out all the way until I find dry Luan, which is basically to this member, this cross member here that goes right across. And that also acts as the electrical conduit. So key here is to cut off small chunks so you're not burning too many bags. Cut maybe like 1 foot by 1 foot squares so you don't have to cut them in half. It's easier to cut them off here than it is to take big chunks out and then cut them into smaller pieces after. So this is about an hour worth of work to get to this point, which is not crazy. Cleanup's not going to be fun, but I will see you after I take the rest of this section of the floor. We're about an hour and a half in to the floor demo, and as you can see, we've got the whole front section basically out. Now, be a little more careful with your Sawzall than me. I just used a demo blade, and I took a little chunk out of that, so I'm going to have to reinforce that with a 2x4 probably. Speaking of 2x4s, interesting what they did here is they took a piece of lumber and they put it across these 2 sections here. I guess that's to support the weight of the door, but just to note that when it comes out. And the other thing they did, which I don't understand at all, is they put a bolt in here, and it's just like a chunk of 2x4. And I don't know if it was ever actually connected to anything or not. But again, you get a better picture of this. This entire gaping section here has no cross members. So we're going to put some in because, again, that's cheap insurance against twisting in the wind, add some more stability, improve the comfort as we're in the thing, and definitely eliminate some of that sag. So we're going to finish tearing this apart. Here, I've got, other than this little screw up of mine, which is not, I'm pretty mad at myself about, we are going to take it back to about where the nose of the hammer is. So we've got to get around this electrical conduit, as you can see, and we're not going to use the Sawzall in here. I've already made enough of a mess with that, so we're not going to touch the Sawzall here. We're going to take our pry bar and our big ass hammer, and we're going to tear some stuff apart the old-fashioned way by hand. We are going to take the Sawzall to finish some of this stuff up here, clean this up, and then what we have to do is take the pry bar, and we have to just clean this entire edge up. We got to get rid of this stuff too in here. This looks like 2x4. This is just going to have to be straight up replaced. Frustrating, but is what it is. We're going to try to get that out from the bottom because I've seen it on the bottom. And then we're going to put a piece of fiberglass or something to wrap around that to cover it. You'll notice that I left my edging. There's a couple spots where there's a bit of a rip, but that's enough for me to put my new underbelly on. And the other thing I'm going to do tonight after I hook up the power is I'm going to get the grinder out here. And we are going to take the grinder to these frame rails. We're going to hit it with some rust converter first thing tomorrow morning, bright and early. We're going to come out, we're going to hit it with some truck bed liner. And then when we go get our materials from the hardware store, we will have everything ready to go to lay the floor down. I guess the easy parts in this whole equation. What we're going to do now is we're going to expose this electrical channel. And we're going to try to dig in behind it. Basically, I've cut a line here, and that's going to be the line that we're going to take things out to. Once we're back to that line, things get a little bit easier, but we need to see what we're working with first. So I'm going to hit this, rip it up. In the final stage of the front floor demo. Yay! So we've got to, or second from final. I marked this. We're going to cut this straight. Right from wheel well to wheel well, and we're going to use a circular saw. We're going to stop about when we get to that broken wood there. We're going to use a circular saw just for the sake of precision. Again, making sure you're wearing proper PPE, which I have been the whole time. You haven't been able to see me, but I have been wearing proper PPE. So we're going to cut this, and then we're just going to pull it out in layers. Again, the wiring, the power to the trailer is not on. We are not going to play with electricity. And we're going to pull this off in layers, see what happens, and then we're done the front demo. All right, so it looks like we're done demo phase 2. I'm going to do a little exploring before I tie in the new floor tomorrow. I need some daylight, but under there, that vapor barrier is a little bit wet. So I'm going to cut it back and just, again, make 100% sure that what we're dealing with is perfectly dry. The top doesn't always tell the whole story, but you know, you look at the foam. The foam is in fantastic shape. It's bone dry. When I was peeling it off, the glue is still rock solid. So, you know, I think we're in pretty good shape there. But again, you can't be too careful. You've done all this, so why keep going? It's hard to believe that this was a trailer 3 days ago. So now I've got these pieces at the front, and these little guys here. Okay, there's this rotten piece. See, this is a bad design, so I'm going to take some sheet metal. I'm going to put that in here. Previous owner obviously tried to hide the body a little bit here. Okay, you see that there's that missing screw. There's these screws here. There's a rotten piece of wood on each side that needs to come out, so we're going to pop that out. And after we're done, we're done. We're going to call it a night. This is what I finished last night. Didn't do a video because it was pretty dark, but as you can see, there is no floor left in this front section. It is completely gone, and my suspicions were confirmed. There are no cross braces in this floor. So I regretted that I cut it up to here because this floor was actually really good, but I'd already taken a Sawzall to it at that point. So I was sort of stuck. But you know, the rest of this was a real pain to clean up. You'll notice I left a flange around the edge again, like I showed you before. So there are no cross braces. We are going to put in cross braces though. So we're going to put in pressure treated 2x4 studs across this to make sure that it is good and rigid. Right now we are letting it dry out. If there's any other residual moisture We're gonna, I chipped everything out, but we're gonna be super, super careful. We're gonna get rid of all of that. I'm even going to clean the flange on the edge here to make sure that the tape adheres properly. And the other thing I'm going to do today, it's going to be kind of a light day because I got a lot of work to do, not just trailer work, is I'm going to take a grinder with a brush to all of the surface rust. Then I'm going to hit it with some rust converter, which will turn it into a paintable surface. And I'm going to paint the entire frame. I'm just going to do a quick job. But I'm going to paint the entire subframe. I'm going to paint the entire, all of the legs with truck bed liner spray. It is a super, super durable coating, and it will make sure that no more rust gets in it once I have treated this. It's about $35 worth of materials to do that, and again, cheap insurance to make sure that the rot that was in the floor is not going to eat into the beams later on. So back at it in a few hours.